Okay, hello and everyone, and thank you for joining PCM and Intel's webinar. The best test solutions for business are built on Intel architecture and Windows 8. My name is Justin Freck, and I'll be your host and moderator for today. I just want to cover a few quick housekeeping issues before we get started here. First off, we will be recording this presentation, and we'll be sending out an on-demand version to everyone. So if you have to drop off the call for any reason, you will be able to listen to the rest of the presentation. At the end of today's presentation, we will be conducting a live Q&A session. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please use the question pane that can be found on the right-hand side of your screen. You can send those questions straight to myself, and they'll be addressed during the Q&A session. If you do not see the question in a Q&A pane on the right-hand side of your screen, pull it down from the drop-down menu, and there'll be a Q&A section. You can also use the chat pane if you need to. I'd like to introduce our presenter today. His name is Eric Townsend. He works with Intel, and actually, without any further delay, I'm just going to hand things over to Eric.
Great, thanks, Justin. And for everyone that's here today, really value your time. At the end of our webinar, webcast, we're going to be giving away a tablet and LeapPad. So definitely make sure you save the whole thing, and then we'll have interactive Q&A at the end. Really hoping that the material helps you today. There's a lot of different solutions out there, and we're going to talk a lot about them on the first slide, my introductory slide, just so you can see all the devices from different types of ultrabooks that swizzle. There's tablets. There's so many different things out there. And with Windows 8 on us right now and growing as far as in functional applications, wanted to just kind of talk about that today. So as we go through, if you have any specific questions, please make sure you send those in to Justin. We'll have our Q&A at the end, and also someone's going to be getting a LeapPad tablet today. It's really great. So if we get started, first of all, there's been a lot of changes with computing over the last couple of years. Specifically, if you think about three big pillars that a lot of people are impacted by, devices that are out there, the interfaces, and then also just how productivity has changed. And a lot of different mobile devices have really redefined how people are doing business. If it's a great example, in the past with devices, there were the big desktops that just sat on the desk, and that was pretty much it. They would make sometimes a couple different form factors. The notebooks that were there were really big and bulky. As we start seeing now, there's smaller tablets. There's ultrabooks out there that are really thin. They all are very, very fast as far as booting up. So the devices have definitely changed a lot. That landscape, even before you had maybe two form factors, now, even with all-in-ones, you've got 4 or 5 different form factors to choose from. So devices, big change. I think also interface-wise, everyone knows, if we think back to Windows 2000, right, or even back to Windows 95, when you got in that graphical interface and you had where you could use the mouse to click on things and make things come alive, and that was really where it was at. And now you're seeing where with touch, it's really changing how applications are built and how people actually interface with their different computers, whether a tablet, an ultrabook, or even an all-in-one. So a lot of big change there. And then I think from a productivity perspective, everyone always talks about productivity, but now you think about productivity of when people can use their devices. So in the past, you had to make sure that your system was plugged in, because it may only last for 2 hours from a battery perspective, or you had to make sure that if your data to sync, it took anywhere from 2 to 10 minutes to sync your Outlook data or any other information. Nowadays, the battery life is an all-day battery life, and it's kind of got that always connected, so that even when it's in a certain sleep state, it's still going and gathering data. So 3 big pillars that we see from an Intel perspective, just how things have changed on the device side, interface side, and productivity side, and where we see things kind of going. Now, I'll give you a couple examples on touch devices and how they're transforming the user experience overall. And I kind of just pick 3 major verticals that are out there. Some folks here I think are in those verticals, some aren't. But if we think of education, healthcare, and retail, and we see how devices are changing. Education, we used to have these big, heavy backpacks, all the books, right, and in binders and that. Nowadays, that's changing where you're having e-textbooks and you're able to share and collaborate with things. And then also being able to have the applications where not only you can get specific content to read, but also there's associated content from a studying perspective. So you're getting a lot of content that's coming together across applications in the healthcare perspective. you're starting to see changes there. We're looking at data. So it's not just apps and how they cross-site education. This is now the data and getting access anywhere. And that data can be a patient record, and that record can include information about their medication they're taking, how long their stay has been there, what condition they have, but also images. So those images in the past, you know, you had to get them printed out, you had to have a, you know, the screen that you could pop some that light behind it. Now, sharing that electronically, being able to zoom in on things is pretty big. And more importantly in healthcare, not only that data is about the patient, but also the ongoing data that the doctor is putting in after they've seen the patient, they reviewed data with the patient, being able to add on to that record. So seeing a lot of information change there in healthcare towards data. In retail, we see a lot of big things there, whether it's, you know, being able to help a customer check out like mobile point of sale, to going through and working with customers as they're in a store, showing them different things that are available, checking inventory, all that. And this slide, I just want to make sure it calls out that when we think about devices, and these got Windows 8, it's got Intel powering them, it gives different people in these different verticals new capability, right? We weren't able to have different applications working together and being able to add information together, like in education, healthcare, being able to view different things in different places and access data any time, or being able to have that POS up on a mobile screen and have it being able to have the horsepower to run a POS application in a small tablet. All this stuff here is helping these businesses in these different verticals. And there's a lot more examples that are out there. There's just three I just focus on to start the conversation. So with all this great thing, right, I know we think about Windows 8 and everyone knows about the interface on the main screen with all different tiles. And I point out that when you think about these different types of tiles that are out there, there's a lot of applications that are involved there. So the collaboration aspect, right? How do I make sure I collaborate but I don't put my, you know, data at risk? If anyone's gotten an email or has gotten mail in the last probably 2 or 3 weeks, there's been a heightened activity around security with people getting, you know, stuff taken out of their bank accounts or identity. In the last couple weeks, it's been a lot more than usual. So this thing about making sure that the risk about software is really, really big. So, you know, we think about Gmail, you think about Facebook, a lot of the social things, there's a lot of things happening there. But also, if you think about how you're managing those devices, right, in different applications. You see here for McAfee, Symantec, Big Fix, just all these different things out there to help manage these devices once they get out. And then just the standard, you know, for my business, right, how do I make sure that I've got the right application for my employees? And some of these are just the base ops applications, but there's even stuff beyond it, like stuff we're using like WebEx, right? How do I make sure that that's working with not only my existing infrastructure, but new things I bring on? And, you know, all these things relate to productivity, from making sure your folks are getting things done, but then also they're able to collaborate and do things securely. If they're on site, right, at your headquarters or at a branch office, or if they're working from home. So give you kind of an outlay of all this. Now I'll tell you, when we start looking at devices specifically and how things are changing with mobile solutions based on Intel architecture, Windows 8, big difference, right? We think from a, you know, where things are moving, touch, all-day use, thin and light, being able to select different applications, and then having an instant on, always connected. Those are big things that are required more, you know, on the user side, right? So your employees, different people that are out there, they are expecting this nowadays. It's no longer of, man, I got to make sure I have my system plugged in, and if I unplug it, gosh, I can only have like 2 hours of battery life. No, they want the entire day, right? Because if they're traveling throughout the customers, they require that. Now, on the plus side, right, they got to make sure that on all these devices and requirements, you got to make sure you've got that wide range. So for everyone here, people that are in IT and managing different devices out there, they want to have a wide range. So they want to make sure in my my environment, it's not just having a notebook or having a desktop. I want to make sure I've got a tablet. I want to make sure I can have an all-in-one. I want to make sure I've got the Ultrabook. And I want to make sure that all these devices have access to this information. And that gives us some of the cloud conversations you could have about having a public cloud and having people get access to that. So a lot of these devices here, right, because they've got Windows 8, they can run desktop applications. Also, they have full compatibility with different peripherals out there, which we'll talk about a lot. And these devices you have, a very key thing is you want to make sure it plugs into your existing infrastructure. And there's a lot of cost things involved with trying to implement a new infrastructure for a new type of device. And then overall, keeping that total cost of ownership low, right? And if people say total cost of ownership, I like to use the term of total cost of operations. When I go and implement something, how much does it cost for me to not only implement it, the ownership side, but operating it, doing the software updates, being able to keep my employees productive with new applications I put on. How much does that cost? So we've worked a lot with Microsoft. Intel has around Windows 8, around Office 2013. A lot of the applications they bring out, we optimize on Intel technology, not only in the application, but also how it's displayed and everything else, which we'll get into today. So hopefully this kind of gives you a high-level view of just how Intel and Microsoft have been working together. If I break it down to 3 big pillars that I'm going to go through today, is around compatibility, personalized productivity, and security and manageability. Now, when you think of compatibility, this is just saying that everything that you have is just going to work. Applications, your hardware infrastructure, peripherals you have, like let's say your printers, your scanners, everything you have, it's going to work. And it works across devices. So device to device, like I said, if it's a tablet, and I'm looking at a certain application and I'm in Windows 8, if I look at that on Ultrabook Windows 8, it's going to look the same. It's going to be the same thing. The user experience is you're going to have the same expectation across devices. So that's compatibility. Personal productivity is really making sure that whatever you need, you get when you need it, right? So really making sure whether it's the form factors, it doesn't matter where you're at, you're standing up, you're sitting down, you can use the device, differences in interfaces, and once again, always being able to get that data as fast as possible. The final piece, the pillar that we'll talk about today, is the security and manageability, and this gets to that TCO thing and really making sure that people are productive and their systems are not being taken down because of different security attacks, right, different threats that are out there. So we'll talk about this. This relates to a lot of people on the phone here that you have employees or even yourself if you're remote, right? How do you make sure that that environment can be maintained and it can be up, no matter where the employees are. So 3 big areas we'll kind of focus on. I'm going to first go into compatibility, so give you kind of a detail on this. And me being Intel, mentioned my name's Eric Townsend. I work in our America's Market Group. I work with a lot with the end customers on how they're deploying different types of technology, whether it's tablets, whether it's Ultrabooks, whether it's desktops, all-in-ones, cloud technologies. And when I look at this, people have an IT infrastructure in place today. And that's, funds that people have been putting over, decade upon decade from a software perspective, a client hardware perspective, a server hardware infrastructure, network, everything, right? And if we think just from an application perspective, there's over 4 million applications that run that have been validated on Intel processors and Windows operating systems. So that's a very big amount of infrastructure people have paid for. Beyond that, right, there's just over 1 million peripherals that are out there that have drivers that run on a Windows platform based off x86 or Intel architecture. So once again, that's speakers, that's cameras that you may use for a WebEx, that may be printers, that may be monitors, variety of different things. The peripherals are very key. Now, with all those pieces there, you've got those are just standard infrastructure you have in place. There's also just think of security, right? A lot of people are trying to look at and say security infrastructure, whether that's a firewall, whether that's antivirus software. A lot of people have gone through and put that in place today, and that's existing infrastructure that needs to work. It doesn't, not just in place, it needs to work. So how do we make sure that drives? And then also making sure that a lot of the applications that are used outside your company, be thinking of like on the internet or different websites like Adobe Flash, for example. 85% of the top 100 websites on the internet use Adobe Flash. 80% of video that are on the internet is Flash player based, right? So making sure that you've got the infrastructure in place that's compatible with the Adobe applications that enables you to consume all that rich content that's out there. And like I said, some employees even utilize it when they're doing presentations to customers. So infrastructure goes across, big applications across Windows and Intel. You've got your infrastructure from a peripheral perspective, security infrastructure, and then also just basic applications that's used day to day. So compatibility is something that it's kind of easy to see. I want to break it down so you get an idea. And this, I'm really going to give you a simple table, right? So you'll see on the left-hand side going up and down, I'll go over some specific features to be looked at. On the top right, I show Windows 8 Pro with Intel technology, Windows RT with an ARM processor, an Apple iPad, and then Android with an ARM processor. So specifically, if you think of Microsoft Office and Office 365, the professional versions, Windows 8 Pro and Intel processor have been validated together, all the stuff works. If you start going across the Windows RT with ARM processor, there is functionality, but it is limited as far as going across the full Office 2013. For people know, the full Office 2013 Office 365 has not been validated with iPad. And then if you look at Android, operating system with an ARM processor, once again, validation happen, does not work as well. Got some limitations there and bugs overall. So that's as far as on just, Office applications. We have to start looking at legacy applications, right? And legacy applications, ones that have been validated on previous Microsoft operating systems. You port those over to Windows 8 Pro with Intel processor, those work, right? But you can start seeing the limited capability with ARM, and then you start seeing as it goes across, there's RT, there's things with iPad, and there's things with as far as Android where it's not limited, it's actually not going to be working, and it's not going to be valid at all. When we start looking at peripheral compatibility, same thing. This is where, and peripheral may seem like a very ancillary thing to folks, but think about this. When you get a notebook, let's make it simple, and you dock that thing for the first time, and all of a sudden you want to go use the printer, right? You know how you always have to go through and make sure you've got the right drivers, or, ask you. When you have a Windows 8 Pro on Intel processor, it'll be compatible with that driver, and it just works. On the other ones that are out there that may be limited or doesn't work at all, you have to go and find the driver, and you have to hope that it's even available. So talking about those peripherals, it doesn't seem like that big, but when there's over 1 million that are out there already validated, already have the drivers built, it can become a key thing. And it even relates to productivity. If the productivity is not there, it drives down people having to stop doing their job and going to find things to make sure it works. So domain join, group policies, this just gets into some technical things as far as bringing things on and devices onto the network and being able to manage those. And also just making sure you have a wide range of Windows 8 Pro with Intel architecture. It's across a lot of different OEM systems, so depending on who you like, it's out there across all different types of form factors, whether it's tablets, whether it's all-in-ones, ultrabooks, standard notebooks, standard desktops. It goes across there. When you're looking at other type of operating systems or other processors, it doesn't go across all. I know there are definitely Android with ARM is growing, so they have a lot of things out there that you can choose from. When you start looking at Windows 8 Pro and Intel, there's kind of a good alignment there. And it's about the compatibility with your existing infrastructure. And this is just to say there's a lot of things out there. Definitely you can go and try them. But when you start looking at a total cost of ownership and implementing it, that's one piece. But that total cost of operations, right, that starts going up higher. You start actually having a higher amount there. So that's from a compatibility perspective. Let's go a little bit into personalized productivity, right? So personalized productivity, when I think of this, there's a couple key areas that I'd like to kind of focus on. Specifically, the employees of today versus the employees of the past are different. Expectations are much different, right? So they want to make sure that wherever they're at, their device works with them. It's not that they work with their device. Meaning, if I want to be standing, like so I'm standing up, I want to be able to have something I can put my hand and I can use it, right? Like a tablet I can have in one hand. Or if I'm sitting down, I want to be able to sit and be able to have something I can type on. And nowadays, the flexibility of tablets and jackets being included, and once again, everyone that stays, at the end, we're going to have a raffle for an Elite pad. Nowadays, there's jackets being built, right, where you can actually go through and you can actually connect in a keyboard, right, but it makes it so that you can have standing, have a tablet, sitting, you can actually have where you can type. We'll mention, right, workloads have become more intense. There's a lot more things in background that you got to deal with. It's not just, a virus scan and a backup. There's all this type of encryption going on, synchronization, anti-spyware, and that's just in the background. In the foreground, there's even more things that are out there, right? We're seeing more things growing with that overall. Now, with all of this, touch is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger from not only what's being put on the marketplace from a hardware perspective, but within Windows 8 and all those tiles, there's a lot more tiles be coming out and you'll be hearing about of different applications. And for people that say, well, touch, gosh, I think it's cool. I'm not using it right now, but I'm going to be using it. And I always ask people, I'm like, okay, and I'll ask everyone here, right? How many people here have a cell phone that has touch on it? Right, so for everyone that's here right now, look over at your cell phone, and you probably got touch enabled on that cell phone, right? So when you're thinking about buying a system, and I'm really clear for folks, generally it's a 3 or 4 year time frame that you're going to have a system for, right? So if you don't get a system that has touch today, 2 years from now, right? So 24 months, and we know technology months are long. I mean, things can just happen very quickly. Right? That's a long ways away, but a lot can happen between now and then. Touch, there's so many applications we develop between now and then for touch. It's just something to make sure you really keep consideration about. And I was in a meeting this week inside Intel, and people were talking about all the touch devices they have and all the software that's coming out. And people that don't have touch, it's kind of like you're almost left out. Like, gosh, you see how this stuff works and be able to access. And the only reason why I just see it very clear is because we technically are already using touch today in our lives, right? We've already got phones and things we're using touch with. So consider that. And then also, remote connectivity is growing, right? There's a lot of different things that are going out there from just a traffic perspective. A lot of people working from home. A lot of your environments are remote offices, so you're seeing a lot more remote connectivity coming in to different businesses. So, we think about how these things work together. If I look at, just the experience and where people are at, and we start looking at from, once again, kind of give you this table here. It's a great touch experience. That is something, like I said before, it's here, and everyone's good at it, right? That's just something. So when you see, this many architectures and software and our manufacturer are adopting a touch, it's something that's required, right? People are just, there's so much inertia behind it. Make sure you're looking at that. Making sure there's compatibility there is a big deal when it's going to applications. When we talk about multi-windows and being able to have different windows, and I'll get into details here in a minute, but actually being able to use things across multiple windows, so you have a desktop, multiple windows, how that works and have capability, that's really, really strong as far as with Windows 8 Pro and Intel, where if you look across other processor, it gets limited, and other architectures, it's not available. When you start looking at devices that convert between a notebook and tablet, so not just a tablet, not just a notebook, but ones that convert between there, convertibles, Windows 8 Pro and Intel processors are big there. Being able to save and search for different things with different file management systems. Microsoft with their operating system, you have a lot of capability you can do there. Adobe Flash, right? And I mentioned this earlier, 85 of the top 100 websites use Adobe, right? Think about all the video that's out there, 80+%. So ability to view Flash web pages. Windows 8 Pro and Intel processor, you get that complete. You have limited options with other folks, but it's complete there. Full peripheral capability, and then being able to keep data fresh even when the data is asleep. You have that capability, and that's something that's growing also. So a lot of things to think about, and sorry for showing you all these tables and things, but I'm just trying to get you to think about, okay, when we're thinking about opportunity for refresh, we're looking at these new devices, what should we be considering? And these are some key things here. Now, I want to make sure when we think about, Office specifically and on Intel architecture, think of it in these different areas, right? So opening files quickly from either a local place, on the local drive, from email, even from a SharePoint site, very, very quickly, right? And being able to open all the Office files, regardless of size. There are some other operating systems that may have Office ported to them, but on certain sizes, you have to save it to your hard drive to open it up. You can't just go and open it up automatically. On certain operating systems, when you're using a version of Office and you go to open it up, and we'll go to this in a second, the data is not always there. When you're going through and making updates, right, you're making comments on things or tracking changes, different macros, that full functionality is there on Intel architecture in Microsoft Office. Formatting stays the same, and then also that peripheral support. I know this sounds really basic, but being able to plug your camera in when you've taken a picture at an event, or being able to plug something in and just having it work doesn't always happen, right? But the key thing is Intel architecture on Office just fully works. And I mentioned this a second ago about the Windows, right? I want to make this clear. I try and show it on here. There's on Windows 8 and Intel, and I kind of, if it's on the green, if you go below that, I got Intel, Windows 8, and then ARM with RT, and then on the far right, I've actually got with ARM and iOS. Multiple windows happening at one time, multiple screens, all that stuff going. This is where you're actually seeing a difference. And I want to make sure it's clear. In the day and age we're at right now, I don't know, most people here, if you do have a desktop you're using, you probably have multiple monitors. And it's probably a pretty big deal. Not only have both those monitors, but also to have multiple screens inside those monitors. Right? So you get multiple things up at one time. I know for people that are on this call here that are in the financial industry, right? You have multiple windows up you're looking at one time. So unlimited windows, that desktop UI, all those things that you can have, Windows 8 and Intel, Windows 8 Pro and Intel, that's your best thing there from unlimited windows. When you start looking at just two windows, right, you're going to go down a little bit. You know, Windows 8 Pro, like I said before, and Intel, it's got unlimited windows. You could still do two windows if you want. Windows RT and ARM is going to support just two windows. It won't do the unlimited. Now, there are other things out there. If we start looking at just a one-window solution on the right-hand side, you can see that there are certain applications out there devices only have one window. That's all they can support. They can't do multi-window. There's apps where they can have the app that actually has a two-window showing, but if you want to have two apps going at the same time or two applications that are full desktop applications, that will not work. You have to pick one or the other. So big thing is, when we talk about productivity, how are you empowering your end user to do multiple tasks at one time? So if you want to see email, I want to see different apps applications, I want to see legacy applications all open at one time, how do you support that? So that's something that's really key. And it's something that it doesn't seem like that big a deal, right? For folks here, if you do have two monitors, you know the value of having two monitors. If you don't actually have multiple applications at one time, it may not seem like that big a deal. But for people that are in certain industries, financial services, if you're in healthcare, right? Even if you're actually in retail and being able to show a page that actually product information and the POS app, multiple windows are a big, big deal. So, did mention about just the multiple monitor, right? And this gives you an idea, once again, where you look at, you know, when you have unlimited windows and how you can actually have multiple things showing, different windows, different things, right? And the key thing I tell you is that with Windows 8, right, Windows 8 Pro specifically, those tiles all represent different windows that you can actually bring up. So when I'm thinking about multiple monitors, you want to be able to have that. You want to have it just work. And those multiple monitors, you want to have as many, you know, tiles that you want to be able to access and utilize. So this just gives you an idea of when you're looking across things, right, multiple monitors going from the top, you can see all those tiles there, having one main screen, opening up and showing, you know, on the top right, one additional window, and the one big monitor, and the small window, you can see some other pictures. As you start going down at the bottom, just more and more windows opening up, right? And then we do show graphics, right? In the lower right-hand one, just one graphic picture there, but you can see how it just flows across. It's not like it's broken up. That's one picture there. I know we're all wishing we were there right now without an island that, but you can see it's all together. Great graphics overall. Last thing on Pro2, I'll show you as far as how things come out, and this is a real-world thing. When you think about different applications and how things pop up, and I'll give you, on top here, I've got Intel architecture with Windows, Intel architecture with Windows 8, and then making sure that we've got an example of, like, for example, another tablet like an iPad. So here, you can actually see, like, for example, in Outlook, when you actually have an email, you can see you've kind of put in a emoticon with a smile, and all of a sudden the translation doesn't happen there as far as an emoticon perspective. Now, that's not that big a deal. When you start looking at, let's say, a PowerPoint, and you're trying to show a graph and different sales, right, and you're trying to do an update to maybe your management team on how things are going. You could see Intel architecture, Windows 8, you see the graph there. When you actually start getting to the pie chart with just a general tablet like an iPad, it actually merges the two things together, and the data isn't as clear, and it may not show the right story of what the graph you started with. So make sure you're aware in PowerPoint things can change, even though it is a Microsoft product. You go across operating systems and everything goes. Another point to bring out too is in Windows, when you're going through and using Windows, it's Intel architecture in Microsoft. Not only is it, you know, how it looks, but also what is shown. So you can see here, On the left at the bottom, you see that there's the graphic there showing how things work. On the far right-hand side, you see that the graphic actually goes away, and it's missing the header and the footer. So the gray bar up top, that's empty. The gray bar on the bottom is empty, and then also the image is gone. So I want to make sure you see this. This isn't just something from a how fast it is and what it looks like on a screen from just, display, but also when you're showing things, sharing things, opening things up, content can decay across different devices. And depending on, how important the document is, it can make a big difference. So also productivity-wise, want to make sure it's clear. We know the expectation from the users, right? They not only want to be able to have something in their hand, like a tablet, but they also may want to have a device that can be really thin and light, like a laptop, right? And it's really, there's different usages out there. On the far right side, you see a really thin ultrabook. In the middle, you see one that's maybe a detachable tablet when you want it, a notebook when you need it. We try and make sure we've got all the different processors that support that. But from a productivity perspective, a lot of pieces that are involved here, different types of usages, different types of work style, and we make sure we support it across all of our processor lines. So Atom, our Core i5, and our Core i5 with vPro enables all that remote manageability that you can utilize, once again, for systems inside a core building or remote, being able to make those updates from a software perspective and being able to remediate any hardware issues that come up. So we've been through two big things. We're coming to the home stretch. I want to remind folks, at the end, we're going to be giving away a tablet today, and then also we'll have our open Q&A, so please make sure you're sending over questions. We're walking through. The first two things we've talked about, right, the productivity and all these things relate to more of the end user. I want to talk about security and manageability and where that impacts. And as you've seen kind of through the presentation, I love talking about numbers because I think that's really where we all get impacted, right? It's really where we're making investments strategically. We look at it and say, okay, what's the impact of this investment? And it's, back in the day of ROI, return on investment, right? Return on return in general. What are you, when you're implementing something, how much is that going to cost? And we talk about total cost of ownership, which is definitely part of ROI. We start looking at total cost of operations, and you'll see here, if we just think of a tax, right? So I'm always a big person of, no matter what the size of business is. So your company may be a company of size, 30, size 300, or size 3,000, right? Everyone's under attack nowadays. So the SMBs that are out there, 28% are under attack or been under attack. With that attack, there's also different types of devices that can be impacted, right? So it's no longer just that there's one device that a user will have. On average, there's more devices that have to be managed secure, about 3.5, and that's just for an SMB employee, right? So once again, small medium business, they may have a phone, they may have a tablet, they may have a notebook, they may have a desktop, they may have all different types of devices that are out there. Now, a lot of times we think of security and different issues there. That is one thing, but there's also things around data. For anyone here that is in healthcare, anyone that here deals with the government, right? We all know about HIPAA violations, about Sarbanes-Oxley, and all the legislation in place there. So think about this. Data loss can be very, very, very costly for people that know HIPAA, right? If you go through and you have one of your patient records that are made public, the whole record, that can be a $2,000 fine. So with that, if you lose data, you can also lose customers, right? That hits your reputation, and at the end of the day, that can be lost revenue. And these are numbers we get just from people that have had impact over the last year. And I'll tell you, with all the infrastructure that's out there, right, all the new stuff that's coming, great new wireless products, great new hardware products, even the great new offers by Microsoft, right? There's still that legacy infrastructure that people are putting money towards keep maintained because they've been doing that decade upon decade. So how do you make sure that you're able to address these security issues, you're able to get the right device in there, but you're able to have it fit with that legacy infrastructure? Now, again, I got to show you a tablet to see from a security manageability perspective. And I'm going to, very similar to our one before, right? I got a security section, a manageability section. If we think about Windows 8 Pro with Intel, Windows RT with ARM, Apple iPad, Android with ARM processor. I'm just showing you across this, right? So remotely locking down missed devices. So devices that go missing. And this means inside your company, outside your company, devices missing could be that it's stolen, right? So something goes through and all of a sudden someone's in the airport and they're in a cops up the airport and they turn around, their device goes missing. How do you actually go and manage those systems? anti-theft technology from Intel, you can do that. Other devices, other architectures do not have something like that. Identity, right? I mentioned in the beginning of the call about the rate of identity thefts that are happening over the last 60 days and how much has gone up and how much passwords are getting hacked and all these things. Identity protection from Intel, working with Windows 8 Pro, definitely a solution you can use there. Encryption and BitLocker, right? There's different solutions that are out there. Full integration with Windows 8 Pro and Intel, it's locked in there. Microsoft App Locker, another one. Smart Screen. You're seeing all these different things out there. Even being able to go through and manage a device, even if the OS is inoperable, right? Or if it's powered down. With vPro technology, you can go through and manage it remotely. It's all done securely, right? There's other solutions out there, one solution out there that may not be done securely, right? But this is all done securely, all done remotely, and works with that existing infrastructure. And a lot of technology out there, we say vPro, that goes across our small, medium business, our mid-market, large enterprise customers. We even have small business managed for smaller customers. But I think when you look at all those things, I mentioned there's domain join, group policy, all these pieces here, this is for you to think about, right? Of, okay, these different devices I'm bringing in, whether it's tablet, Ultrabook, desktop, all-in-one, all these different things. How is it going to relate into my security policies? How am I going to be able to manage it better? All these things are important things to think about. And you can see across what you have available. I'm not trying to just add more and more data on and give you more information, but this gives you an idea of what you should be looking at. Now, from an Intel perspective, this is the technical slide, so everyone that's really technical, it gives you an idea here when you think about identity protection, malware, securing different data and different assets, and then recovering things. Just gives you an idea across our different technologies. So we've got Intel, our Atom processors, our core processors, and our core vPro. And you can see there's very basic technology. We have an Atom built in, and as you move core and you get into core vPro, a lot more things that are out there. And that recovery enhanced patching for folks that have remote employees, right? So people, you have remote employees out there, that total cost of operations we all know is more, right? To those software updates to make sure they actually stick. Intel vPro technology, that platform helps with that. So make sure when you're looking at your environment, you're looking at what users are going to implement it and what you're going to get them, make sure if they're remote that they've got that vPro on there so that you can manage remotely, no matter if they're OS 7 issues or if it system goes blue screen and turn off. So security manageability, a very big deal. Whenever we're talking about technology, I always like to go through and give references of other customers and where they're at across various places, right? So you can see Allscripts, for example, more in the healthcare, right? Last thing we want to do is to cause hundreds and hundreds of physical operations to update the software. Windows 8, you'll be able to push out updates through the PCM platform and hopefully drive down the total cost of ownership. So that may be interesting, right? So if I actually buy something new, a new software with hardware, how am I going to actually, it's saying there, drive down the total cost of ownership. That's not actually just for that one investment. Remember, that's for all of your existing infrastructure you have in place today. Ordnance survey, right? Security is of vital importance to us. We must have devices that can be locked down with BitLocker encryption and Microsoft group policy. So security, for folks, I'm assuming everyone here has had some type of run-in with security issues, whether in your company or personally, right? Until you actually have been through it, and if you have, which most people have, you know the impact it has. That time when you use a hard drive, or you lose a hard drive, and they come to you saying, how can I go through and get this back, and you can't get it back, or they lose something, and then you're like, gosh, that customer data out there, how do we get that back? Or these are big deals, right? In Windows 8 Pro and with the Intel architecture, you have the solutions to be able to deal with those issues that come up. And I think, Computer Center is very interesting, right? Solution meets the full needs of Computer Center, right? And our customers. When it says the needs of them and their customers, that is saying we need to make sure we not only give our customers the best experience, different devices that meets if they're standing up, sitting down, or just all things they need from the device, how fast it can be turned on and all that, but also we need to be able to manage it, right? So if you think about business usages of it, Windows 8 Pro and architecture really kind of tells that story together. I do just want to give you a little bit of idea, right, of when you think about total cost of operations, right, and you take just different tablet types that are out there, I want to make sure you see there's a lot of things involved when you implement a tablet from a total cost of operation. Look, just over 2 years, right? Because tablet, there's not really been an official study as far as how long do tablets last for. We all know different versions of different tablets that are out there, but this just gives you an idea across different types of area. From the blue is actually the hardware, right? You start going across where different software updates. The green kind of gets some more infrastructure inputs, but user times, that top purple part that I just highlight on. Tablets, I want to make sure everyone's clear. Everyone, that may look like a price up front of, okay, buying a tablet's going to be less expensive. That is one piece, right? But unlike standard computing devices you got to buy additional software and apps, right? So those apps cost money. They may be not that expensive, but you still have to buy apps. It is known that you buy more accessories for tablets than you buy for a standard computer. So your standard computing interface, whether it's desktop all-in-one, a notebook, even an Ultrabook, you don't buy as many accessories than what you do for a tablet. So I'll have to look at this and like, I don't understand why that number would be $2,000 or higher to make sense. Because when people buy tablets, they may buy not just one keyboard, they usually buy two. I think this has like 1.8 keyboards for every tablet because they'll have a tablet maybe at work, they may have one in their briefcase. Those are all extra costs are involved. And then also those updates that happen, right? Software updates, those are things you have to pay for. Even if you're buying smaller apps, those there may be subscription-based charges involved. There's a lot of things overall. And once again, if you go with different types of operating some different platforms, fitting it into your existing infrastructure, those costs can go up. So I just show this for you so you can see the TCO opportunity. I think everyone here, right, from business perspective, has only got a certain amount of money. Their budget's only so big. So just keep this in mind. You're thinking about going and implementing. Don't look at that base number, right, of how much that tablet costs. Look at all the pieces that are involved there. Did talk about, if you think of touch solutions, mentioned this earlier, but just kind of reiterate, touch, all they use, thin and light, a lot of applications out there. Instant ons, always big, right? Those are what you really, our core capabilities we're helping deliver through our technology. The rapid response technology we have in our third generation core systems, being able to have all of the thin and light capability out there with all of our technology, our SSDs, our Ultrabook designs, a lot of key things there. But once again, on the plus side, you can see all of it, right? I think from a business perspective, being able to control that operating system, being able to go through and make updates is really, really key. So on the business side, vPro technology, being able to manage it, it's really, really key. All different devices out there, folks, we're excited. We've been working on, working with a lot of people too on what can be available for folks to use. So someone says going to win that tablet, right? We've been working on those for a while to make sure that they, have that long battery life, right? Not just the 2 hours, but it can go all day. And tablets can go even longer, right? So being able to have that. And then it works for your existing infrastructure. So it's a very, very big deal. So a lot of good things, once again, to think about here. I just kind of, in closing, think about this, right? When you're thinking about your infrastructure and you're thinking about all those new devices that are going to be implemented, right? You have to make sure you look at three big things. You want to make sure you select an architecture, both on the hardware and software side, that's compatible with your existing applications and your peripherals you have today. Because you're not going to go through and refresh your entire environment, right? I think we all can agree on that, right? There's different pieces you're going to upgrade different times. We all know, just as a clarity, right? I think most people have this date burned in their head, but April 8th, 2014, Windows XP will no longer be supported. There will be no new software updates, no new security patches, nothing at all. So April 8th is a key date for you to think about. But for all those applications that are going to be staying on, right, the environment that you may have for Windows 7, moving to Windows 8 Pro, right, you got to make sure that those applications work. You got to make sure those peripherals, when you plug it in, that they work. And on Intel and Windows 8 together, they think that peripheral's there. I think from a choice perspective, the different types of devices out there, we're in a whole new era, right? Well, there's tablets, Ultrabooks that convert from a tablet to a notebook. Detachables do the same thing. A lot of different things that you have out there. And so a lot of flexibility and choices that you can give. And I think, lastly, and probably one of the bigger things people think about from a longer-term perspective is, with Intel and Windows 8 Pro, right, it's seamless. How you integrate something into your existing fleet, how you make sure it works together, it makes it so that you can manage those fleets of different devices at the lowest cost possible and giving your end users the best experience that they could think of. So those are the keys, and compatibility, choice, and making sure it seamlessly fits in are something really big to think about. And with that, we'll kind of start talking about Q&A. And I don't know, Justin, if you want to walk through some stuff.
Yeah. So Lewis asked, why are more tablets moving away from the micro SD and USB ports, even the HDMI, when they're needed for productivity?
Yeah, so what's ended up happening, right, kind of goes back to that thing of the jackets and the different accessories that are coming along. They're, when a tablet is made, it has a different board, and that board usually has connectors on it. There's different things being built so it can make it smaller and smaller. When you think of notebooks, how they're able to have a bigger size, that you use a bigger board that's got more connections on it. What people are doing nowadays, they're saying, okay, to make sure it's not using as much battery, to make sure that it's thinner and that can be, kind of the most sleekest looking thing, they're saying we're going to put those connectors on an external accessory. So that's why you're not seeing on tablets are going away from it, because they're relying on you either putting a jacket on it when it's mobile or for you to go and dock it.
Okay. Should 11.5 by 8 be the standard size screen for business tablets?
Gosh, that is a great question. It's interesting. I was having it's kind of that, how we talk about stand and sit, and I mentioned earlier about, some people, when they're standing, they want to be able to have the tablet just in their hand. And when you're sitting, you want to be able to have it where it's like be able to have capability where you can type on a keyboard. Some people actually say that the 7-inch tablets and 8-inch tablets are growing because you can just have it in your hand and it's easier to use. I think the size is really dependent on what the user is doing. So for people that are in the field, like different people that are out in the field, and they want more of a rugged type tablet, it's going to probably be a smaller size, like that 7 to 8. I think when you have the carpet crushers, that are in the actual office, they're going to probably want that larger size. I do go back to, and I've seen this done a lot lately, is that environments that I work with, people that are out in the field and they come to an office and they dock their tablet, that is hooked up to a dock that is hooked up to a monitor where it's shown bigger. So like normal notebooks, right, in the past was, okay, well, that's your primary device, and you got to make sure it's a certain size so you can see it. Nowadays, we're seeing a lot more where there's multiple devices people have. It's the tablet's used in one area, a notebook or a desktop is used in another area. So screen is bigger, I think, is better on the eyes, personally, but as far as it comes down to usage of each user.
Okay. Can we run Microsoft XP mode virtual machine for legacy software on Windows 8?
So there's, and I can't answer that one directly because I don't know the specific application. I mean, there are different virtual things that you can run in Windows 8. And as everyone knows, right, so we're clear, one of the tiles that you'll see on Windows 8 is a top or desktop. So the same mode that you have in Windows 7, you have things virtually on desktop, you can same thing in Windows 8 Pro specifically. The one thing I would have you do for folks that are upgrading, going to Windows 8 Pro, any of your custom applications, your legacy apps that you've built, they usually, I have yet to run into an implementation where, they all work, they usually transfer over if it was Windows 7 to Windows 8. If you're going from Windows XP to Windows 8, you want to do a validation there. There's some couple code changes in that. It's, kind of 2 generations jumping on the operating system. But if you're already in Windows 7, you have that legacy app running virtually, that should transfer over. But if you're going directly from XP to Windows 8 Pro, you want to get that in the lab and just check and make sure it's working.
Okay. Well, it looks like that's all we have for questions at the moment. I'll give you guys a few seconds to send anything else over if you want.
I know, Justin, there's a lot of data. I got to try and make sure everyone's got a lot of good things. And I think, I mean, it's good for folks to know, right? I think, your folks, you know, your account reps that you work with normally, they have a lot of information to give you guys. I just give you kind of an overview today, so I want to make sure that you do follow up with them. A lot of different devices out there. Microsoft has some different things that you can utilize. I also, too, tell people, if you haven't done a lot with Windows 8 Pro, one of the best things you can do is actually go on YouTube. There's lots of videos out there. You know, when I use Windows 8, it's pretty, I mean, it's pretty simple. I'll tell you, it's when you get used to all different tiles and the flexibility you have, it's better than Windows 7 in my perspective, because I just have things readily up there. I don't have to go and click 2 or 3 different places. And then also, because it has that desktop mode, when I hit desktop, it's the same, I mean, it's very similar. So the hardest part, I'll tell you, is that when you're going and moving to touch, once you get used to touch and you use something that's not touch, that's where it gets different. And I'll tell you, if you have multiple devices, right, so if you start using a tablet, if you have a desktop, you're going to want to touch the tablet, or you're going to want to touch the screen of your desktop. There are wireless monitors starting to come out now that are actually touch. So you can actually, your touch monitors, maybe you have set up on a dock, maybe it's not connected directly to the system itself, that will have touch on it. So we're starting to see those come out also. People have asked, well, if I upgrade to Windows 8 Pro and it's all touch, how am I going to get my existing infrastructure to be all touch? Monitors being sold out there. There's different things that are coming out, and once again, a lot of applications moving that way too.
Do you know, off the top of your head, Eric, this is kind of a new thing, but you know, the Leap Technologies display, the new thing that they're coming out with the, would that work with Windows 8?
It should, and I use the word should. A lot of it's on the different drivers that come with it, and I'm pretty positive it does. But it should. And there's lots of things. It's interesting because a lot of the different displays that are out there, they've all kind of Windows 8. You know, it's for other applications. It's got a pretty wide span on the screen. So I always tell people it's kind of like, and there's different ways. If you see different touch systems coming out, especially all-in-ones, it's not only touch, but it's like on your fingertips touch. In the past, would you do touch and it would be just one place at a time, right? You take your finger and you could hit it one. Nowadays, touch screens, if you put all 10 fingertips on your screen, it'll feel all 10, and it can do different things. So.
Okay. Well, it looks like that's it for questions. Do you guys have any further questions? If you want to sit on this and Lewis asked about Windows 8. Actually, I can answer that.
Sure.
After the complaints about Windows 8 usability, is there an updated version out there? Yeah, actually, they did a release, Lewis. There's a Windows 8.1 that's gotten some pretty good reviews so far. So you can check it out on some of the tech blogs. They'll have it, like TechCrunch and Verge and stuff like that have reviews of it, the new 8.1. Have you seen the, Eric, have you played with the 8.1 yet?
A little bit, yeah. And it's and you know, I think it's a lot of people had concerns about the start screen. We don't get to a start button and things like that. I think they've kind of answered that issue. You know, I think as any type of operating system, right? Whenever the new thing comes out, getting people to use it and see how it works is a bigger deal. I think everyone should know, I mean, the key thing to consider is the fleet that you have today with your hardware, knowing that things are going to change come next April. And knowing meaning you will not get any new updates. And so, I mean, hackers and people out there know that date. That means that any new virus or anything that's built will not stop. Will not, it'll be vulnerable, right? So just being prepared for that and figuring out what your strategy is now, right? And saying, what should we do? And that's why I think knowing the different devices you have, doing an inventory of what you've got right now that maybe that older XP, how are you going to transition that, right? I think about it. It's very, very key. You've got time right now. You know, if you're looking, you know, a couple months out, you're going to start, the clock's going to start clicking much faster. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's it, everybody. Well, as soon as I say that, someone sends a question in.
Good.
Any indications that Microsoft will enable developers to develop apps for the desktop in the RT experience? If so, how could that impact Intel's strategy?
That, you know, I'm not, so I'm working in Intel, so I don't know all of Microsoft's strategy on their software development. I know that they have a lot of software programs for developers out there related to their app store. Intel, we even have our applications that are out there. We have a whole development program for different developers. So from a software perspective, I mean, people don't actually think about this, but we're the third largest software vendor in the United States. And we don't actually software work with vendors, software developers out there. So I would say really depending on if, I don't know, if a person's a software developer or just trying to see, you know, overall what's Intel involvement in software development and with Microsoft. We do a lot with Microsoft today. We do a lot with developers out there. Developers develop across platform. We know that, and we definitely want them to do that because we want to enable the best experience for any user, right? Any business user or any of their applications. So, but I would probably say specifically for like RT and things like that, if you go to Microsoft's Developer Zone, they've got all the tools and information there for that.
Okay. So I think that's it for reals. So Lamar Hortman, congrats. You kind of were the random winner. So
nice.
Lamar, we will be sending you an email in the next day or so to get a little more information to be able to send you out that leap pad. So congratulations. And if you guys have any further questions, please feel free to email us, email your rep, and if they can't answer it, I'm sure they'll be happy to send it on to Eric or any of the other Intel guys.
Totally.
Again, cool. Thanks, Eric. Thanks for presenting. Thanks for the presentation. It was awesome. And thanks everybody for attending.
Great. Thanks, Justin.
Have a good day, everyone.